My name is Kirstyn Trombetta, and I will be reading out of To Kill a Mockingbird. I'm just going to tell a little bit of background about this banned book that is no longer banned. Obviously, if you know it, it's well known. To Kill a Mockingbird is a novel by Harper Lee published in 1960. It was immediately successful and has become a classic of modern American literature. The plot and characters are loosely based on the author's observations of her family and neighbors, as well as on an event that occurred near her hometown in 1936, when she was 10 years old. The novel is renowned for its warmth and humor, despite dealing with the serious issues of rape and racial inequality. The narrator's father, Atticus Finch, has served as a moral hero for many readers and as a model of integrity for lawyers. One critic explains the novel's impact by writing, "In the 20th century, To Kill a Mockingbird is probably the most widely read book dealing with race in America, and its protagonist, Atticus Finch, the most enduring fictional image of racial heroism." As a Southern Gothic novel, the primary themes of To Kill a Mockingbird involve racial injustice and the destruction of innocence. Scholars have noted that Lee also addresses issues of class, courage, compassion, and gender roles in the American Deep South. The book is widely taught in schools in the United States with lessons that emphasize tolerance and prejudice. Despite its themes, To Kill a Mockingbird has been subject to campaigns for removal from public classrooms, often challenged for its use of racial epithets. This is literature using fiction at its best and mixing it with autobiographical elements to reflect a complex time in American history. We are once again facing a bleak and uncertain financial future. Rapes still occur on a daily basis, and racial strife continues to permeate many aspects of social interaction. I think what upsets people the most about the themes in this book aren't that they are in the book, but that they did and still do exist outside of the pages of fiction in our supposedly modern and very real society. The truth is that these elements hit too close to home for many people, and the easiest way to deal with that discomfort is to shove it back into the shadows of fear and ignorance rather than open a book, learn from the history, and use that knowledge to create meaningful dialogues in order to examine and better our united futures. So I'm going to be reading from chapter 19 of To Kill a Mockingbird. And what happens in this part, it's the trial of Thomas Robinson, who is a black man who was accused of raping a white woman, whose name is Mayella. Thomas Robinson reached around, ran his fingers under his left arm, and lifted it. He guided his arm to the Bible, and his rubber-like left hand sought contact with the black binding. As he raised his right hand, the useless one slipped off the Bible and hit the clerk's table. He was trying again when Judge Taylor growled, "That'll do, Tom." Tom took the oath and stepped into the witness chair. Atticus very quickly induced him to tell us. Tom was 25 years of age. He was married with 3 children. He had been in trouble with the law before. He once received 30 days for disorderly conduct. "It must have been disorderly," said Atticus. "What did it consist of?" "Got in a fight with another man. He tried to cut me." "Did he succeed?" "Yes, sir. I did. A little, not enough to hurt. You see, Tom moved his left shoulder. "Yes," said Atticus. "You were both convicted?" "Yes, sir. I had to serve because I couldn't pay the fine. Other fellow paid his in." Dill leaned across me and asked Jem what Atticus was doing. Jem said Atticus was showing the jury that Tom had nothing to hide. "Were you acquainted with Mayella Violet Yule?" asked Atticus. "Yes, sir. I had to pass her place going to and from the field every day." "Whose field?" "I picks for Link Deus." "Were you picking cotton in November?" "No, sir. I works in his farm fall and winter time. I works pretty steady for him all year round. He's got a lot of pecan trees and things." "You say you had to pass the Yule place to get to and from work. Is there any other way to go?" "No, sir. None's I know of." "Tom, did she ever speak to you?" "Why, yes, sir. I'd tip my hat, then I'd go by, and one day she asked me to come inside the fence and bust up a ship rope for her." "When did she ask you to chop the ship rope?" Mr. Finch, it was way last spring. I remember it because it was chopping time and I had my hoe with me. I said I didn't have nothing but this hoe, but she said she had a hatchet. She give me the hatchet and I broke up the chipper rope. She said, I reckon I'll have to give you a nickel, won't I? And I said, no, ma'am, there ain't no charge. Then I went home. Mr. Finch, that was way last spring, way over a year ago. Did you ever go to the place again? Yes, sir. When? Well, I went lots of times. Judge Taylor instinctively reached for his gavel but let his hand fall. The murmur below us died without his help. Under what circumstances? Please, sir? Why did you go inside the fence lots of times? Tom Robinson's forehead relaxed. She'd call me in, sir. Seemed like every time I passed by yonder, she'd have some little thing for me to do. Chopping, kindling, toting water for her. She watered them flowers every day. Were you paid for your services? No, sir, not after she offered me a nickel the first time. I was glad to do it, Mr. Yule didn't seem to help her none, and neither did the children, and I know she didn't have no nickels to spare. Where were the other children? Oh, they was always around, all over the place. They'd watch me work, some of them sat in the window. Would Miss Mayella talk to you? Yes, sir, she talked to me. As Tom Robinson gave his testimony, it came to me that Mayella Yule must have been the loneliest person in the world. She was even lonelier than Boo Radley, who had not been out of the house in 25 years. When Atticus asked had she any friends, she seemed not to know what she meant. Then she thought he was making fun of her. She was as sad, I thought, as what Jen called a mixed child. White people wouldn't have anything to do with her because she lived among pigs. Negroes wouldn't have anything to do with her because she was white. She couldn't live like Mr. Dolphus Raymond, who preferred the company of Negroes because she didn't own a riverbank and she wasn't from a fine old family. Nobody said, that's just their way, about the Yules. Maycomb gave them Christmas baskets, welfare money, and the back of its hand. Tom Robinson was probably the only person who was ever decent to her. But she said he took advantage of her, and when she stood up, she looked at him as if he were dirt beneath her feet. Did you ever, Atticus interrupted my meditations, at any time go to the Yule property? Did you ever set foot on the Yule property without an express invitation from one of them? No, sir, Mr. Finch, I never did. I wouldn't do that, sir. Atticus sometimes said that one way to tell whether a witness was lying or telling the truth was to listen rather than watch. I applied his test. Tom denied it 3 times in one breath, but quietly, with no hint of whining in his voice, and I found myself believing him in spite of his protesting too much. He seemed to be a respectable Negro, and a respectable Negro would never go up into somebody's yard of his own volition. Tom, what happened to you on the evening of November 21st of last year? Below us, the spectators drew a collective breath and leaned forward. Behind us, the Negroes did the same. Tom was a black velvet Negro, not shiny, but soft black velvet. The whites of his eyes shone in his face, and when he spoke, we saw flashes of his teeth. If he had been whole, he would have been a fine specimen of a man. Mr. Finch, he said, I was going home as usual that evening, and when I passed the Yule place, Miss Mayella were on the porch like she said she were. It seemed real quiet, like I didn't know quite why. I was studying why, just passing by when she says for me to come there and help her a minute. Well, I went inside the fence and looked around for some kindling to work on, but I didn't see none. And she says, nah, I got something for you to do in the house. The old door's off its hinges and fall's coming on pretty fast. I said, you got a screwdriver, Miss Mayella? She said she sure had. Well, I went up the steps and she motioned me to come inside, and I went in the front room and looked at the door. I said, Miss Mayella, this door looks all right. I pulled it back and forth, and those hinges was all so quiet, and it came to me that there wasn't a child on the place, not a one of them, and I said, Miss Mayella, where are the children? Tom's black velvet skin had begun to shine, and he ran his hand over his face. I say, where the children, he continued, and she says, she was laughing, sorta, to save 'em nickels, but I done it. They all gone to town. Tom's discomfort was not from the humidity. What did you say then, Tom? Asked Atticus. I said something like, "Why, Miss Mariella, that's right smart of you to treat him." And she said, "You think so?" I don't think she understood what I was thinking. I meant it was smart of her to save like that, and nice of her to treat him. "I understand you, Tom. Go on," said Atticus. Well, I said I'd best be going. I couldn't do nothing for her. And she says, "Oh, yes, I could." And I asked her what, and she says to just step on that chair yonder and get that box down from on top of the chifforobe. "Not the same chifforobe you busted up?" asked Atticus. The witness smiled. "Nah, sir, another one, most as tall as the room." So I done what she told me, and I was just reaching, but the next thing I know, she grabbed me around the legs. Grabbed me around the legs, Mr. Finch. She scared me so bad I hopped down and turned the chair over. That was the only furniture disturbed in that room, Mr. Finch, when I left it. I swear before God. What happened after you turned the chair over? Tom Robinson had come to a dead stop. He glanced at Atticus, then at the jury, then at Mr. Underwood sitting across the room. "Tom, you've sworn to tell the whole truth. Will you tell it?" Tom ran his hand nervously over his mouth. "What happened after that?" "Answer the question," said Judge Taylor. 1/3 of his cigar had vanished. "Mr. Finch, I got down off of that chair and turned around, and she sort of jumped on me."